Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And I'm super excited about this one because we've got Melina Regnier here. Now, this is the really cool thing. I only met her a couple of weeks before I was going to do my retreat, and she's actually a chef. So I will get her to explain a bit more about what sort of chefing she does. But 3 weeks out from my retreat, I didn't have a chef. I met her through a connection. We basically agreed on a phone call that she would be the chef at the retreat. I then met her a few days later. And from then, it's kind of like I can't imagine her not being in my life. Like, seriously, I feel like we're old souls who've always been connected. And I'm so excited about bringing her here and getting a bit behind the scenes into her story because she cooks like an absolute genius. But I want to know more about the human being that she is, and why not do it on a podcast, right? So, Mel, welcome. But before we learn a little bit about the incredible woman that you are, can you just share what excites you to have a conversation with me today about courage?
Oh my God, where do you start? As I said, we only met a few weeks before your retreat, and for me, you've brought so much courage out in me because it was one thing I was really lacking before I, funny enough, met you. I went into the year, opened the doors, and went, this year I need to find a mentor. This year I need to find the courage to really stand on my own 2 feet and really go for what I wanted. And I turned a lot of things down thinking, crap, did I do the right thing? And then suddenly you popped into my life. So universe, and yeah, courage it's you have to have that leap of faith. You have to have that courage to really take that next step.
And it's actually a really fascinating story because the day I called you, only the day before, something had gone wrong and you missed out on doing something that you wanted to do and were a bit sad about. Could you just share a bit of that? Because it's a really cool kind of case of serendipity that how we came together.
Yeah. So, and I don't mind sharing this with everyone. So back last year, I got told I had to have an operation to get rid of fibroid in my uterus, which is fine. It happens to 30% of women, not a problem. But in that, it's sort of like, I've never been to hospital, never had an operation, never had to deal with this. I'm a solopreneur, so I run my business by myself. I run 2 businesses by myself. And they're saying, you've got to go in, have this operation. It's going to happen in January, and you're not going to be well for a couple of days. And I'm like, cool, not a problem, can deal with that. And then as I got close to the operation, I started getting a bit scared because, again, never been to hospital before. And I went, crap, what happens if I get stuck in hospital? So one of my close friends, she's just had quite a number of operations, and she got stuck in hospital for 4 days and then wasn't able to work for 6 weeks. And I'm like, what happens if that happens to me? So I looked at the weekend following the operation. I'm like, I've got a farmer's market. And farmer's market, I only do one a month. It's for me, for my cake business, to get me to continue to be out in the community. And I said, I've got a farmer's market. I'm not going to be able to do it. And it's not the point of being at the farmer's market on the day. It was the amount of stock you have to prep, the amount of stuff you have to do to get through that day as a chef. And I was sitting there with my friends going, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do it. And they just said, what does your heart say? I'm like, my heart says that I can't, and I'm going to have to pull out. And it's not something I want to do because I love being in the community. I love seeing customers, and I love all my little old ladies that come and get their lamingtons all the time. I didn't love letting people down, but you know what? I had to make that decision, and I messaged a lady from the farmer's market and said, look, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I just don't think I'm going to be well. I don't want to take the risk and pull out at the last minute. I'm not somebody that pulls out on somebody at the last minute. I want to give them as much time. And and that happened. And then the next day I got a phone call, and the rest is history with you and me.
Absolutely. And I was delighted because had you been doing that farmer's market, you could not have said yes to the retreat. So
absolutely not.
That is definitely the universe and serendipity. Okay. So you've alluded there to the fact that you run a number of businesses.
Yes.
Tell me what businesses they are. And then I want you to, if you can, share something from, way back where you first really had to reach in and find some courage.
Yeah. Okay, so I run two businesses. First, my Regnier Cakes, which is been going for nearly 13 years now. It's my cake business, something that, and I'm a chef by trade. I have been for 24 years, and it's something I've wanted to do my whole life. Things that you don't even know that we're probably going to discuss. So that's my main business. My second business is Events on Citrus, which is a function space. And the function space actually came from me having a cafe where my cake shop was. And I used to do a lot of high teas there, a lot of functions. I had a beautiful outdoor garden where I used to hold baby showers and bridal showers and do high tea events for people. And then I actually had to move from the building, so I had to find another spot. And that was the one thing I never wanted to give up, was the function side of it. I love creating high teas. I love having people special moments, that we can create something beautiful for them, something memorable for them. And so I started looking around for a factory, being that I could have a bigger space with less costs. And then I found the building that I'm in now, and it's Events on Citrus. So it has two function spaces. One where I can host my beautiful high teas and cater for, and the other space is a bit more of a relaxed cocktail style area.
Oh, and I've been there, and for me, it's 3 minutes around the corner from my house, so it's even more exciting. But it is absolutely spectacular. I can't wait to run my own events, which I've got to set some dates in that space. But here's the really cool thing, which I love about you. As you know, I don't cook. Not only do I not cook, I can't stand cooking. And when I was at school, I think I was in year 9, cooking was one of our subjects, and it wasn't a graded subject. So you didn't actually get a pass or a fail or a grade. But they ended up ringing my mum and saying, even though we don't grade this subject, we have to fail Kim. She is so bad. She has made so many stuff ups that are stupid. Anyway, all my mum could do is say, well, at least she's good at maths. So I love that when you did agree to doing the retreat, that you don't only like make it beautiful and make the experience, as you said, like even with your events, you cook everything from scratch. Like every single little morsel of food that was on our plates, you've made from scratch. That blows my mind. So take us back to when your love, or when you realized you loved cooking, and where maybe some courage came into pursuing a career that's had you 24 years in this space.
Okay, this goes back quite a while ago. And as my mother would say, I used to play bakeries in the sand when I was 5 years old. So we've been going to Phillip Island. Phillip Island's my safe place. It's my restore, rejuvenate place. And since I was 6 months old, my family's been going down to Phillip Island. And when I was little, I used to everybody else would build sandcastles and do all that. Here I would set up a little shop in the sand. I would dig a big hole, set up a little counter and all of that. And I would make like sand pies and sand cakes and things like that. And that came to this is what started. So I was 5 years old. And that's when all I wanted to do was become a baker. Now, there was really no history at that time that I knew. No one in my family was in the food industry. My mother's a pharmacist. My father is a PE teacher. He used to do school sport for Victoria. Like, there's nothing in there that would say, hey, this girl has the baking skills. It comes from some sort of family-orientated thing. Nothing. My grandma, not a good cook besides her scones. My nana, old country housewife in the middle of nowhere, just cooked what you had. So where that came from, we had no idea, but it was a goal, and I never looked back. I was obviously very strong-minded. So from then on, Women's Weekly Cookbook, which everybody knows, that great cake cookbook, every birthday of mine, every birthday of my brothers, we picked what we wanted, and there I'd be in the kitchen making it with Mum. And that was our birthday cakes from then on. And I never gave up on that passion.
Wow. So how did you turn it into just something that you liked doing, especially while you're at school, into something that you literally do for a living?
Yeah. So first it was Mum couldn't get me out of the kitchen. So she sent me to a local cake decorating school in Greensboro. I lived over the other side of town to where I am now. And I just was in there with the 80-year-old ladies. I was this 12-year-old, 11-year-old girl in this cake decorating class at night. The mum would drop me off to with these 80-year-old women learning to create these little fondant flowers and all the old school ways it used to be. Back in that day, it was fruitcake and fondant. That's what it was. There wasn't anything much else. From there, I sort of entered every competition I possibly could. I put things into the Melbourne show, Whittlesea show in my area. And we had a fete at school, and I entered the Miss Piggy Cake from the Women's Weekly Cookbook. That was my favourite. I love Miss Piggy. And I entered that and won first prize. And I'm like, yep, well, I can do this. So I just continued. And everything that I did at school didn't matter. Really bad at English, really bad at science, which is strange because baking is a little bit of a sciencey thing. Was good at maths, but everything else I was really bad at, except for sport. That was family history. I'm definitely good at sport, but there wasn't anything else I could do. So I just honed in on that one cooking class that we had a couple of days a week. And my home ec teacher was amazing. I've still spoken to her in the last couple of years, 20, 30 years on. And just kept fighting for it. And at 16, I left school and became an apprentice. So.
Wow. Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. And it's so funny that you said about science and cooking.
Yeah.
And I've just come off the back of reading the book Lessons in Chemistry and then watching the Netflix series as well. And it's really funny because I actually love science but hated cooking. And I've never, ever thought of the two of those words coming out of anyone's mouth at the same time.
Yeah.
Since that book and now what you've just said, I can actually see the science in cooking.
Yeah.
Still don't like cooking and think science is amazing. But anyway, I'll leave that to you.
That's where saying that I really didn't have a skill that was passed down through my parents. My mother's an old school pharmacist back in the day, making the medicine and the tablets and all that from scratch. So I do have that science in my background. So I did get something my mum loves and always has loved, the whole chemistry side of things. And that was her passion. That was her love. That it actually has. It was just in a form of something else.
So cool. So you could do like your own lessons in chemistry thing. You could be that girl.
I could if it had to do with edible items that weren't drug-related items.
Oh, there you go. Oh, my God. Okay, so doing all of this, where's somewhere where you've had to really reach in and find some courage then growing up? And it might be in cooking, it might just be in life. Tell me, let's get to know you on a deeper level.
Well, knowing what you want to do from a young age, it has its blessings because a lot of us don't know what we want to do. A lot of us don't know. But to fight every moment, like all the kids at school, why would you be doing this? Why do you want to do that? Saying that, there was 3 people in my year level in my class, and we were in a very small school out in country Victoria. Funny enough, 3 of us became chefs. One owns a gin distillery and one owns a chocolate factory now. So funny that we only have a very, very small class of like 25 kids, and 3 of us became that. And I think that was because of our home ec teacher and the way she mentored us and honed in on it at what we love to do, because there's a very big difference between an academic person, and because my school was very small, there wasn't, if you wanted to do a trade or you were a creative person, you had to leave school. There wasn't anything for us. Year 12, there wasn't a food program for year 12s. It actually came into place in our year level, obviously because of the 3 of us. But there wasn't a PE for year 11 and 12. There wasn't, you had to do maths and 20,000 different English or chemistry. So chemistry, physics, all your science subjects. There wasn't something there that you can go, okay, well, I can stay at school and I can do this. So you have to take that fear and go, okay, well, this is what I want to do for my life. I have to jump into it full steam ahead. And there was definitely challenging times being so young, but I have really supportive parents. My dad drove me to work at 5 a.m. for the first 18 months. And then getting through that stage, getting through especially for me, a baking field, because I did go into bread making first, an area where there was a lot of men. It was a male's trade, and fighting to be a female apprentice, only 16, 17, in a man's world, which I always stood up for myself. So I think that's a sports person in me. And then continuing on and going, okay, well, I want to own a cake business. I want to go there. And something that you don't know, that I actually injured myself quite badly when I was 20, just before I turned 21. I got a really bad arm injury at work, and it actually stopped me from doing what I love to do, and took me on a path that I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get back into the field that I love. I didn't know if I had to have an operation. I didn't know what was going to be the next path for me. And that was probably the hardest but courageous thing that I had to do was, okay, this is what the world is happening to me right now. It's obviously not my time. And I look back on it now saying that wasn't my time. I had to learn a lot of business basics to be able to then go, okay, I can get back into my baking world.
Wow. So you actually had an injury where you thought that you were taken out then from ever being a baker in the future.
Yep. So I got the vein tendonitis, which is a tendonitis in your wrist here, for those who can see us, on both hands. And it was overuse syndrome because I was in a very old bakery that had old trays and things like that. Not really meant, I have very skinny wrists, not really meant for the female wrist to be doing this stuff all the time, and usually jobs are shared. So yeah, I injured myself quite badly. Another couple of people in the same bakery got the same thing. I never know what happened to them about it, but I had to look at it and go, look, I couldn't lift a knife and fork. I couldn't drive my car. There was a lot of things I couldn't do. And being somebody who's wanted to do this her whole life, never was out of the kitchen, always was baking. I can't have 2 days off without baking something. That's how crazy I am. So to not have that ability to do what I wanted to do, I'm actually surprised. I can't remember a time that I actually broke down. I probably did ask Mum, broke down crying and going, what's the world coming to? What am I meant to do with my life? I sort of just got back up and went, okay, what's the next step? Because I'm going to get there. I'm going to still do it. It's just not now. So,
especially for someone that you knew what you wanted to do when you were 5 years old, you were saying before. So some people take, quite a long time to work out what they want. And even then doesn't mean they're going to stick with it. So 5 years old, you know what you want. 21, you're now injured and you are facing a fate of never cooking again. Yeah. So you obviously did and do.
Yeah.
And I can already see the strength coming through just in this conversation about, it's almost like tell you can't do something and you're going to prove it wrong every single time.
Absolutely.
But tell me what came out of that, what benefits came out of that, what lessons did you learn, and what did you learn about yourself importantly?
Okay, so it wasn't probably for another, let's just say I'm 42 now. That happened when I was 21. I've had my business 13 years, so you can work out the maths on that. You're the maths brain. So out of that, funny enough, I was then at 21 years old, injured. I could actually go out with my friends at night. And I did actually at that time meet my now ex-husband, but I did meet him. And it was a whole nother family lifestyle. Like I have, as I said, really good family, very close to my family, very close to my brother. Going into a world that, and my parents both worked for a living, both did everything they could to supply us with, going into his family, which mum was a stay-at-home mum. Dad was a worker. Women, to me, what they portrayed across to me, women weren't meant to own businesses, weren't meant to have that. They were meant to be the mum, the stay-at-home, the cook, the cleaner, the everything. And at that time, I was sort of, okay, well, I'll go get a full-time job in what can I do to build me up to lead a team to become a business owner. So I ended up working in retail for quite a lot longer than I wanted to. But I got to do my degrees in small business. I got to do my degrees in merchandising. I got to do all these extra courses that I hoped would set me up for what I actually really wanted. But then I got into this relationship and this marriage that I thought, okay, well, society says for a woman who's in her 20s, get married, have kids, buy a house, do what you do for your husband sort of thing, and he's the money earner and you just plod along on the side doing casual things and all of that. And that didn't happen for me, and that wasn't meant to be my fate. My fate's always meant to be to have my own business. So that pushed me right down to then say one day, I need to fight for what makes me happy, and this relationship and me being, and I don't have kids, so I'm not a stay-at-home mum, but coming home from working a 12-hour shift in Chadstone, and if anybody knows Chadstone, it's ridiculous during Christmas, New Year. I would work 12, 14, 18-hour days just getting through 24-hour trade to then have one day off to run into another 18-hour shift on Boxing Day and then non-stop for another week. But then to expect to have dinner on the table at the right time, have the house spotless, friends just turn up on our doorstep and expect meals on the table, it wasn't what I wanted to do. That's not. I hate cleaning. Believe me, ask my mother. I hate cleaning, and I hate washing dishes. And that's one thing of my career I do not like. But I started to fight, and I'm like, this is my time that it needs to be me, and I needed to take that courageous step and go, is my life with this man what I really want, or do I really want what I started off to be when I was 5? And that life wasn't making me happy. So I started
Did he
the
not
plans.
support you? Did
Yeah.
he not support your dreams?
No. And his father
Okay.
was completely against it. They kept telling me I was useless. They said women can't own businesses. They pushed me down and pushed me down and pushed me down constantly to go, I'm going to start a business plan. I'm going to do this. And finally, when I kept moving towards it and saving up my own money for it and really starting to create this business on the side, to go, I can do this and I can make money. And if we do happen to have kids, I can still be a stay-at-home mum, but then have the cake business. And he sort of started realizing he's not going to be able to fight me anymore. He met me when I was injured. He never saw me in my full spirit of what I wanted to be. He didn't want me to be a pastry chef or a baker working 2:00 mornings. He didn't want me in that world that I wasn't home when he wanted me to be home. And that's when it just, the split happened, and that was the story it was. And before we actually split, it put the first lease down on a shop, and then he left 6 months later, not even 6 months later, and I was left with a shop, a house, and a very casual job at a brewery. And that's it. And I had to make the way for myself. And I had to stand on my own 2 feet as a woman and just go, well, I've got the shop. It's what I want to do. My marriage is over probably because of it, but I want to do it. So I just had to forge forward and work anything I possibly could, to any hours of the night to just keep going. I was working in 3 different breweries, working behind the bar, washing dishes. Remember, hate washing dishes. Helping out as a chef if they needed it, like doing whatever I can, because that's the field that I'm good at. People hire me for it, and just keep going and going and going until I was able. And it was years and years and years later until I was able to, as a single woman, to stand on my own 2 feet and go, I don't need to work that winter job anymore. I don't need to work for that other person. But it's hard. It's to make those big decisions in your life, to go, I really want to do what I want to do.
But interestingly enough, that you met him at a time where, as you said, you were injured. You weren't flying at full throttle. You weren't the woman that you knew you could be because you'd been injured. But that woman that he met was the one that suited him.
Exactly right.
And you've obviously said that throughout that relationship, he didn't support the dreams that you had to be an independent working woman, and the relationship eventually parted. Was there any remorse on your side? Like, you know how sometimes when you do leave a relationship, it's the best thing, or was it a split that you didn't necessarily want to happen?
I sort of, before he left, because he actually left and took a job in another country and just did it without me knowing. So for me, it was like about 4 months before I sort of made that decision that you're either with me or you're not with me. and I sort of split. He wouldn't leave the house. I couldn't leave. My parents lived quite a distance away. I made that split in the house and said, okay, well, I'm living downstairs. You can live upstairs. And this is it. I'm not doing your washing. I'm not doing your cleaning. I'm not doing your dinners and things like that. I need to work on myself. And look, that happened a lot before he went. The day he left, I walked into the dancer. So the day he left, I have a lot of friends in the wedding industry, and this one friend who owns a dance studio in Cheltenham, he said, come in for a lesson. And I said, I don't know, like all this stuff is happening. He goes, you know what? Come in for a lesson. And mind you, I was talking to him about an hour ago. I meant to have a lesson with him today. He's still one of, I have to say, a close friend of mine, because he was there and saw that I needed something to move me forward. And I've always had my love of dance, and my ex-husband didn't want me to dance.
He didn't want you to dance. Why didn't he want you to dance?
Didn't want me to have hobbies. Didn't want me to have my friendship group. It had to be his friendship group. It was one of those relationships where I have what I want, but you can't do what you want to do. And that's what got me through. There wasn't really a time after he left and after I walked into that dance studio, and I was there 5 nights, probably a bit excessive, 5 nights a week for a good 6 months, because that was my healing process. That was being in a room of people that picked me up, that moved me forward. That's the sportswoman in me that had to go and achieve another goal and really forced me to keep going and keep going and keep going. And as I said, still at the same dance studio, 8, 9 years on. I don't even know how long, 10 years on. And I met my current partner there. We always joke.
Does he dance?
Yeah, we met salsa dancing, which was a funny thing because we did meet salsa dancing. And if I didn't go to the dance studio, I think I would have ended up in a completely different part in my life.
That's so fascinating, though, that you've got this guy that basically is not allowing you to live a life that you choose in any respect.
Yep.
In your personal life, professionally, what have you. You end up parting ways, and that next day you end up at a dance school and still dancing. And
that day he literally got on a plane, and 2 hours later, somehow I was controlled enough to drop him at the airport. I still don't know how that sits with me, but literally drove back from the airport and drove straight to the dance studio. I remember I was on the phone to Mum, and I remember screaming at the top of my lungs, just screaming because the boom gates at the airport wouldn't open and let me escape. And all I wanted to do was escape and get out of there as quickly as possible. Poor Mum's eardrums probably still haven't recovered. But I just had to get out of there, and I had to put myself back in a world that I know I loved. And if it's for anyone, what you love as a child and what really makes you happy, go back in, do it. If that's what's making you happy, because that's how you move through things. That's how you, it was a huge courageous step, just going, sure, not a problem. I'll just walk into a dance studio. I haven't danced for 12 or 13 years, but that's fine. Okay, just go in. Don't know what's going to happen. My husband's just left the country. I'll go do a dance lesson. Like, who does that?
I don't know. I think it's so cool, though. I mean, I think dance has such a beautiful place in so many lives. And I think a lot of that does stem from the fact that when we're young, particularly girls, although not limited to girls, but particularly girls, we did it when we were young, and there's that kind of, I don't know, that freedom and that feeling of dancing. But so many of us then stop at some point as we get older. And I've often lately been asking people when the whole dancing's come up, because obviously it's a big part of the world that I've loved as an adult, like, why did you stop? And often it's been, work or jobs, career, things like that, or just you've naturally grown out of it. And then the whole concept of going back to it, it's like, oh, no, but, I'm now 40 or I'm now 50, I can't do it. And you did that, and you're still doing it. And as you said, it probably was part of your rescue plan, albeit not knowing it at the time. Yeah. So how did you, where did you get to? So you've gone back to dancing, you're getting Mel back, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about what happened then from a career business point of view.
As in to get to where I am now.
Yeah.
So life doesn't stop there. You think it's all going to be a happy story from there. I'm back to being a normal. I'm back to getting myself back on track. I'm doing things that I love to do. Back in the career that I want to do. I'm fighting towards everything. Well, we got to a point where I had the shop. I had it on a 6-year term, and
This is a
probably
cake shop.
yeah. So I rented just before my ex left. We rented a shop front in a side street, so it was in a small group of shops. And I always planned to open it as like a little cake shop or a dessert bar or something like that. I did that. I poured my divorce money into this building and opened this beautiful cafe. And then I was able to have the high tea events, as I mentioned as earlier, and do all of that stuff. It got very overwhelming. It was very hard to manage. And although I wanted to do it my whole life, I felt like I did it. It didn't really work. So I had to give it up and close down the cafe as it was and work towards things that I did love about that part of having the shop front, which was the high teas, which was the smaller functions and things. It wasn't the dealing with staff and having to be on the road for wedding cakes, but then having to have a shop front that's open and customers that want you because you're the face of the business. And there was too many people wanting me at the one time, and it was very overwhelming and very stressful, and I had to make that decision. And in the end, I was the only one that could make that decision, so I had to close the cafe. And I remember sitting on the steps outside our house and just sitting there going, I've just poured all my divorce money, all the money that I had from the divorce of selling the home that we had brought together. I'm sitting in this sitting on the steps of this 2-bedroom unit that I'm renting with my partner, in tears, hyperventilating on the steps, going, I can't believe I have to make this decision, but I have to make it. And the hardest thing was, what do I tell the staff? They've just lost their jobs. What do I tell them? Because if it was just me, I'm just like, I'll close up the doors. That's it. I've lost a lot of money, a hell of a lot of money, but it was my choice to make. But there was people that were relying on me for jobs and things like that. That was a really hard point to say, I'm sorry, but you're not going to have a job anymore.
So when you say it didn't work, it wasn't that the business didn't work. It's that it wasn't working for you. Is that right?
It was both. It was, I had a very big wedding cake business. I do 150 wedding cakes a year. And that's what paid the bills on the shop. But then when you start opening it to the public, you've got a whole nother marketing, a whole nother client base, a whole nother lot of people that it takes time to build that business. It takes a good 5 years, I'm learning 5 years to build another part of a business. Like, I've got this image in the wedding industry. I do really well in it, and I can hold it myself or with one other person casually. I can hold that business, but then putting a whole nother, you've got to put that time and effort into that side of the business. I guess when you go in with a partnership with someone, they're sort of taking that control over that part, so you can keep working on the part that makes you money. But because I was in there doing it for myself, I couldn't split myself in 2 ways. I couldn't give up on the brides that had booked me 12 months earlier to say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't deliver your wedding cake now because I'm in the shop front and somebody wants to order a birthday cake. I didn't have the platform set up for people to order birthday cakes without me being there. I didn't have the time to put into a cafe shop front to promote it, to go do letterbox drops, to go, and we're talking before a very big social media, like social media was around, but the way you did it was still letterbox drops, was still word of mouth, was still getting out there to people. And I didn't have that energy to put into it, and I didn't have the right people in place to pay to do that as well. So it was just hemorrhaging money, and I had to make that decision. Was the shop front the thing I wanted to do, or was the wedding cakes the thing? Wedding cakes, and then I worked out the shop front brought me the high teas. The high teas are what I love. I can do the high teas and the wedding cakes without the shop front, without the cafe, and that's how I sort of worked out. It was heartbreaking. It was, I would probably say, and this is a really bad thing, more heartbreaking to me because that's what I've wanted to do. I've always wanted to own that cake shop. Was not to have that cake shop was worse than getting the divorce. The divorce was easy peasy compared to saying I have to close down the cake shop, the one I've worked towards, because it's not manageable to be able to make me money, to be able to pay the bills, to be able to do really what I want to do. So you're going back to that core value of what you love to do.
And you'd known this since you were 5. You had dreams and visions of what you wanted to look like. What's so fascinating, though, is that the road that you took and where you ended up, you weren't doing what was lighting you up from within. You were managing a business. You were managing the storefront. You were managing stuff, and it took you away from it. What's so courageous, though, is realizing this and being at a point where you go, I actually have to make a decision. I loved what you said. You were the only one who could make this decision. And you know that your decision was actually impacting other people's lives. It was no longer just you. So why did you still make it though? Like, what drove you to pursuing something that you knew was no longer lighting up and pursuing what did? How did you do that? Where did you find the courage to do that?
Look, as I said, I have got a very supportive family, and my partner, Matt, he's amazing. And I knew that I think there was always a fear that somebody was going to leave me. Somebody was going to dump me. Someone was going to fly off on me again. And my parents and Matt were just like, you know what? If that's what you've got to do, that's what you've got to do. There's something else, especially Mum, there's something else in line for you to do something. So there was no, if I made that decision, I wasn't going to be bullied. I wasn't going to be told that I was worthless. I wasn't going to be told that I'm useless and I failed. And I told myself I failed. It took me a good 3-4 years to get over the trauma of doing it, honestly. I couldn't drive past that shop front for years. And the story continues. There's a lot more into that as well. But yeah, it was that I had been told for so many years by my ex and his family that I was never going to be good enough. I didn't want to admit that I tried and I failed. And that's hard in itself. But I had to look at what that, I think that was the hardest decision, sitting there and going, shit, I failed at this. I failed it and I let other people down. And Matt and my mum both said to me, and my dad said, well, you really haven't failed. It didn't work. So pick yourself, Dad's answer to everything, pick yourself back up and get moving, because there's no use wallowing, you're wasting time. Get up and keep moving. Sports coaching him.
And great advice. Easy in theory, not always easy to do in your life, especially when you're holding on to something far more deep-rooted than just failing a business. It goes back to feeling like a failure yourself, especially when you've had an ex that has constantly, barrage you with that kind of negative self-talk and no support and you can't do this. But what's so fascinating, Mel, is you did pick yourself up and move yourself on, and you made that decision. And so tell me about where you're at now, because wow.
Yeah, completely different building, hey? So just before the lovely COVID word happened, after I closed the cafe, one of the things, the building was up for sale. Just before I closed the cafe and made that decision, the building that I was in was up for sale. So the landlord was selling it. And there was no way. It was worth way too much money. No way I was able to buy it. And I only had about 3 months left on my lease, and then I could take another option of another 2 years. And I think that was a pushing point to make that decision as well. But the building sold to a guy, and I was cheeky me listening in on the conversation he was having with the real estate agent outside, listened through the window, and he wanted to use it. He had to get a permit for medical license to use it for something. I didn't know what it was going to be at the time. And I'm like, you're not going to let me stay, are you? So all this money, all of this thing, everything that I shoved into this building, means hundreds of thousands of dollars, everything that I ever wanted, a divorce from it, everything, to go, the building's going to be sold, and what am I going to do? So I asked the agent when it was sold, and I said, is there a possibility that they're going to kick me out? And they go, oh, we can't tell you that. And I'm like, okay, well, they came up with another 2-year lease on it. So this would have been 2017, 2018. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take up the option of the extra 2 years, but still had no idea. You had that feeling in your gut, like it's not going to be here. So don't put any more money into it. But it's really hard to build a business in a local area and then have to move it, especially something in hospitality. Like, I don't think people understand anything in food and hospitality. You can't just go work from home. You can't just put a computer on a desk and that's all the equipment you need. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a commercial kitchen, have it licensed, everything. So I'm looking, going, oh, well, I have to make whatever it is in what I can be able to move, hence the high teas and all of that stuff. So I finally got December 2019, finally got the whole, we're not going to renew your lease after your final 6 months. So it was up in, which would have been the June 2020. You need to find somewhere else. And I'm like, oh, great. So I have to move everything. So I started looking for new premises, found this factory that I'm in now, and had that goal and that dream to go, okay, we want to build a event space that was weatherproof, because when I'd have my high teas, they'd be out in a garden, although it was covered. Dad and I made a beautiful makeshift covered area for everybody. And I wanted somewhere that was beautiful, that was calming, that was relaxing, that people would walk into and feel like they were in this beautiful space that they never wanted to leave, but maybe indoors, not outdoors.
Especially in Melbourne, right? With the
Yeah.
unpredictability.
So I found this building, and yeah, the dream started building from there. And then COVID hit. So we got the lease, signed the lease up, and I went in with another couple of girls, and we signed the lease February 6th, 2020, and got the keys 6th of March, 2020. And all three of us are in the wedding industry. So talking about before, 150 wedding cakes a year, we're in peak wedding season with probably another 50, 60 cakes that I had to do between then and winter starting, like within the next 3 months. And we got told 10 days after we got the keys, COVID's hit, we're getting locked down. So here's three of us, wedding industry, just on our phones, nonstop, with crying brides, with I want a refund, with, and mind you, we've just signed the lease for a factory to renovate, to make an event space, to make somewhere for people to come have elopements if they wanted to make places for engagement parties and client meetings and things like that. And we're just like, all that money that we're going, worked our butt off to get all those bookings, to bring that money in, to pay for the renos, to do everything we wanted. I think between the three of us, over 80 cancellations within 2 days. And I had cakes sitting there that were going out that weekend, like 6 weddings going out that weekend that they said, I want a refund. And I'm like, your cake's sitting in my fridge.
I made it. But there's no
postpone.
wedding, right?
We didn't know what was happening. Everybody was like, postpone this, postpone this, postpone this, postpone this. And that was the world. And then everybody knows what happened for the 3 years. It's still a trauma brain. And having to first shut down my cafe, then get kicked out of the building I was in, find a new building, then get hit by COVID. Mind you, still haven't had COVID yet, so I didn't get that part of the COVID. But to build an event space and not know what was happening, I was lucky that I had my cake shop, that I had a really good community around me, that I had a really good database, that they were wanting to support me. They were wanting to buy desserts and cakes and things like that. I was working every day of the week because people were having birthday parties, but it was on their birthday, which would be a Monday or a Tuesday or a Saturday or a Friday, whatever it was. It wasn't like wedding cakes where it's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so you know when you're doing stuff and you get rest day. There was no rest day. It was just going. And in between everything, I was sanding walls and laying flooring and hanging lights from the ceiling and doing whatever I could to build this event space through those 2-3 years of up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. And we were one of the first industries to get shut down, and we're one of the last industries to open back up. But then you had to pay the next year after COVID, having to catch up on all those weddings that were postponed.
Yeah, so that's almost like, the business that was on hold then all came flooding back, but in a barrage, right? Like
Yeah.
full on, and then you've now got to cater for that. So
And no money coming in because you couldn't, if you had 5 weddings on, I couldn't take another wedding. So those 5 weddings were paid for in 2020.
yeah, so you're doing makeup work. You weren't
Yeah.
doing new work, new business, which meant new money.
Yeah.
Yeah, fruit. Wow.
Yeah.
So I know you survived all of that, right?
Yeah,
Because
I'm
you're
sure.
alive and kicking now. But again, you know, such a beautiful showing of courage, because even the energy in which you're sharing this, the positivity and the almost like, no matter what's happened, no matter how many times you're getting kicked down, you are just getting up, going again, and then going higher, like, you know, a bouncing ball. You're throwing it down and it's bouncing higher each shot. That's how I think of you. You're just this bubbly, bouncy ball.
Yeah. And I love it. And then, as you said right back at the start, when I met you and I had to make those little decisions, and it's still happening. Like, those decisions are still having to be made. Like, I think the last 12 to 18 months have probably been the hardest I've had in business because it's working out. And I'm so happy I met you, because I've had to find that whole courage again, and I feel like I've been beaten down, and then I get back up, and then I help everybody else up around me because they get beaten down, and they're not helping me, but I'm helping them. And I was putting way too much energy into other people, helping them up, especially through COVID, especially because I was a leader in the wedding industry. So I was trying to build people up constantly. That made me feel good because I was helping other people. But I really had to find especially the last 6 months, to really be able to stand on my own 2 feet again, because I had that trauma of going into that shop front and then having someone leave me, and going into opening the cafe and then having the building being sold, and then going into a new building and then COVID hitting. It just keeps getting slammed, and I have to forge forward again and go, okay, well, the next challenge has come at me. How am I going to do it? I need to stand on my own 2 feet. I've gotten through everything else with love and support, but I've had to do the hard yards. I've had to be the 20,000 tradies. I've had to go build a bar. I had to go put cabinets together. I've had to be a plasterer, a tiler. If I could be a plumber, I really want to do a plumbing course because that would save me a hell of a lot of money. But if something had to be done, I own the full, complete tool shop now. Because it had to be done, I had to do it. Because
I love that. It had to be done. I had to do it. And I know I've been to the event space. I've seen the kitchen, much as I'm not into kitchens.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. It is amazing. I've sampled your food. I've seen your delicious. I've just seen all of what you bring to the table, and that you are standing on your own feet. And, you know, Mel, I just wrote a blog post on this last night about when you're used to being someone that helps others all the time, when you're used to the one that's extending your hand out to offer support and help, it's really hard to be the receiver and to allow others to help you. But at the same time, it's the only way, if you really want to rise again, is where you open the door and let others in and let others support you. And I know that is something that you're doing now.
Yeah.
And at the same time, looking after yourself.
Yeah.
So, oh man. Hey, and just on that note, and I will get you to tell us all about both of these 2 businesses, because seriously, and I know there was a group message on Facebook the other day about someone wanting a wedding, someone who makes wedding cakes. And I'm like, oh my God.
I know the person.
Best wedding cake maker on the planet. Best cake maker. But you know what? It's not just actually about the cake. It's about the heart and soul that you pour into making that cake so amazing in the experience. But I know that when we're on the retreat, you also shared a story that I just thought was beautiful. And it was all about bags of flour.
The bags
you know
of
what I'm
flour
talking
at the
about?
factory. Yeah.
Can you just share, just, you know, very briefly, sort of what the background and the context was, but what your strength and your courage did and the change it made, particularly for women?
So being back when I was an apprentice, and I said that going into a very male-dominated workplace. So I went into a bakery. Bakeries always men go and do the bakery job. There isn't a woman that starts at 2 a.m. in the morning to go bake bread to open up the shop the next day. They're usually the shop girls. That's why they're called shop girls.
Is that why there's not as many? Because you did say it was male, and I actually wanted to go back and go, why is that? But
because the women were at home with the kids. So if we go back in time, the male went and did that. The women are at home with the kids. They sent them off to school, then went into work to sell the bread so the man can go home and sleep before dinner came. And then she'd be home for dinner. And yeah, it was that whole thing that the males did those jobs, just like they did the plumbing and electricals and all the stuff in the fields and all of that. They got up in the early morning to go do that stuff while the wife was at home and they're making breakfast, whatever it was.
makes
So
sense.
going into a very male-dominated industry, which has changed a huge amount now. I remember going into William Angeles, where we went and did our apprenticeship and like the course stuff of our apprenticeship, and there was, I think, 16 or 17 people in the class. I was the only female. It was all men. Now, so I did a combined apprenticeship. It was called baking, so bread making and cake and pastry. So usually if you just go into pastry or a pastry chef, it's usually a little bit more female oriented. But because I decided to do bread making as a dual trade, I love making bread. So I went into this thing, you know.
I'm laughing because I like eating bread.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in making it. That's why I'm laughing. But you're using love and bread in the same word.
Yeah, I didn't love the 2 a.m. shifts, but I did love making the bread. And so it was very male dominated. And I was a young girl. You know, everything that happened sort of before you're 25, it's a very big, you have to stand up for yourself as a female. We were told we weren't allowed, that any girls weren't allowed downstairs. And I always questioned why you weren't allowed downstairs, because that's where the butcher's department was. And when you're talking that you're an 18-year-old skinny blonde girl, you don't go anywhere near the butcher's department, because it was back in the time when you walked past a construction site and guys would woof whistle you, wouldn't they? They were too afraid that I wouldn't come out of the butcher, not because I'd be butchered, because there'd be too many guys around me. So it was, yeah, very, and these are the apprentices that are at the trade school. So when you go back into the bakery, you think of how many female apprentices there would be. If I've gone into the trade school and there's only me in bread baking, and if you did the sole bread baking class, there wouldn't even be me. So I went back into the bakery and there wasn't any other females around. I did the hard yards. I was in there. Obviously, there's a little bit more of a prettiness to the bread and the stuff that I did. I put a lot more care and time into it. The guys were a bit more rougher. But you're in a bakery that's got 25 kilo, 30 kilo flour bags. You've got trays that were, hence the reason of why I got injured. You got trays that were made back 40 years ago that were full, like they weighed 12, 13 kilos themselves. It's a tray before you put the bread on it. Everything was made for heavy lifting. Now, again, I said I was scrawny. I didn't have a lot of muscle on me. So here I was. I have to lift these flour bags, because if I'm there at 2:00 in the morning by myself, I had to lift the flour bags to get them in the mixer, else the bread didn't get made. But it also comes with a point that, unfortunately, women's bodies, we are a lot more smaller and we don't get as much muscle definition. And, of course, I wasn't going to go to the gym and do that, and don't like the gym. But I'm never going to be able to do those heavy lifting jobs that a man's going to be able to do. They're always going to lift it with ease. And it got to the point where this job was just in the bakery I was, and it was a very old bakery, wasn't meant to have a female baker in it. Wasn't meant to, or have a scrawny little guy in it either. A 16-year-old scrawny guy who also got injured doing the same thing I did. So lifting these trays and all these flour bags and doing all the scroll work and doing everything that I had to do got to the point of me injuring myself. And I remember the owner's wife coming in one day, and she said, because they were really picking on me, because I ended up having to go on to work. They were telling me pretty much that a woman isn't cut out to be in the bakery. And look, this was a big franchise place, so it was owned by the head office. They didn't know. They just chucked people in there, 6 months training, chucked them out again, 6 months training, out they went into their own stores. Didn't get it. It was like, this isn't a female's place. You're weak. You can't do the job. You look at you struggle to lift the flour bags. I'm talking, which woman lifts bloody 30, 40, 25 kilo flour bags a day?
And you're so funny because I would never have associated cooking with heavy lifting. This is so interesting.
Not to matter, 10-hour shifts, no break because I wasn't a smoker, no break because I was a woman. The guys were fine. They could go outside, have a smoke or have a break or go to whatever they want. No, the woman had to stay in there and keep working. The amount that but saying that, I was still, funny enough, a leader in that bakery because I was there all the time and I was the full-timer and I was a qualified chef or qualified baker. I was still being put down by the management that would come in to do their 6 months training to open their own store. I would be put down by them. So every day the big boss's wife used to come in and she was probably in her 70s at that stage. Like they'd moved it on to their son and their grandson and whatever. Anyway, she came in every single day. She'd see me there every single day. And one day I was out as a shop girl because obviously I was injured. I couldn't lift anymore. My arms were stuffed. I was put out in the shop front while I was on work cover. And she goes, "What are you doing out here?" She goes, "You're the best baker we've ever had." And I said, "Well, I'm on work cover." And she goes, "What do you mean? What happened?" And I said, "A lot has happened." Now, again, 20 years old. You don't really want to bitch about what's happening to the big boss. And I'm like, "You know what? Complain to everyone." I recorded absolutely everything. Mum says record everything that ever happened to you. She knew the industry I was in. She fought for it in her life as a pharmacist. She was in a very male-dominated industry as well. She said, keep a book, write everything down, write everything that's meant to be, keep records, everything like that. I put that into the head office. I did everything I could. I told them everything that was happening. I told them I was injured. I filled in all the injury documentation properly. And she goes, "We need to have a chat." So I walked out the front. We walked down to a park across the road and we had this chat. And she said, "This is not right." She goes, "This is unfair. We're bringing in so many female bakers into this industry. We want it to be diverse. Why are you being criticised for being female?" And I was one of the first female apprentices this franchise ever had. I was award winning. I won their awards. I won national Victorian awards for bread making against every other they were trying to get more females. That was their mantra. They were trying to get more female apprentices in there. But here they are, still having 25 kilo flour bags, still telling us to lift 30 of them a day, still having all this old equipment that was so damn heavy that you couldn't lift them. And
so how did this change?
She fought for me. So nothing ever against the company that I was with, but she fought for it. So she took I copied everything for it, sent it into her, and the industry started to change. So Western Milling, who were one of the big flour suppliers in Australia, started making 15 kilo flour bags. The stores that were so old that didn't have the new lightweight trays, like if you're in a new store, fine. I worked in a lot of new stores. I never had the issue before. Started to go through all their equipment and made sure all their equipment was new or up to date. Work cover went through, like she got onto work cover and said, "You're going through all our stores." So equipment was put in there if it was too old school. Oven doors were greased properly so you can actually lift them open. And there was so much that changed that went in there that made people's lives easier. Because again, it wasn't just me as a female being there, it was males, but they were just not the big, heavy, strong males, because when you think of a baker, you think a big, blokey guy. These were young kids that couldn't lift this stuff.
Yeah, so not even that they're female, it's just that they might not have had the body strength or the upper body strength to lift things of this weight.
Yeah.
So changing it would benefit so many, not just women, but others who maybe didn't have that upper body strength.
Yeah. Also the work cover, also the turnover, because you scare people away if they can't physically match that job. But if that job's outdated, I reckon they're probably 50 kilo flour bags back in my grandparents' day. But yeah, so now all the bakeries, everything, even the stuff I get now, 10, 12.5 5 kilo, 15 kilo flour bags, which are easy to get up and lift and move around and do everything.
And you know what? It actually goes back to what you said about before. You don't like the gym. Who needs the gym? Because 10 or 15 kilo flour bags are still not lightweight, Mel.
Yeah.
So you don't need the gym. You're getting the cardio from your dancing. You're getting the weights from your flour bags.
Yep.
You're getting all the mental stimulation from all the business side of what you're running.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're
So
getting your
it's
full
definitely
workout.
world changing. I don't see it as that bigger thing, but then when I did meet a apprentice that was at one of those franchises just before I divorced. It was a sister of a friend of ours, and she was talking about something, and I'm like, oh crap, now I remember how that all started to unravel. And it probably wasn't me, it's probably stuff that was happening in the background anyway, but it took, I think, that little extra push, because I was in the head office store, I was there, the owner's wife loved me to bits, she saw I worked my butt off, I did everything right, and to punish me because I was doing the right thing was not right. Mind you, that manager who did all that stuff to me, he got kicked off to another country.
There you
Very,
go. So
very
yes,
quickly.
it shows that when you're standing on your own 2 feet, going back to what you said before, when you stand on your own 2 feet, not only do you benefit, but there is such a ripple effect of how others benefit too. So just given where we're at the moment, tell us about the 2 businesses that you're in and what your next step is, just in a nice little summary.
A nice little summary. So my cake business is pretty much now heading towards an online ordering platform. I created my brother's very techie. So I created my own online store back when I had the cafe back years ago. That was one of my inclinations of being able to do something that the staff could actually help people with cakes without me having to be there. And that's grown and built, and I really put a lot of effort into it. And then when COVID hit, everything went online. So I was already ahead of the pack. So more things came into place, more things happened that I was able to build that. So I've got this really good, really strong online store, which pretty much takes all the stuff I don't like, which is the computer work, out of my life. So I can spend more time in the kitchen, more time creating things, more time doing events. So I'm trying to push more into that and trying to give up not all my wedding cakes, but my wedding cakes that take distance away from me. So anything that's not really in 20-30 minute drive of me, I'm going, you know what, there's somebody else that can do that wedding cake. Now I want to be in my beautiful factory doing my events. I've had my time. I've done 13 years, over 1,500 wedding cakes. I've had my time in the wedding industry. I'll now just do sort of the local stuff. So my cake business is sort of aiming towards that, more catering for beautiful functions, let's just say. So anything that you need something little bit special, something that you don't want to just go to the regular cake store or the regular dessert shop to get. You want something that's a little bit more personalized for what you have. So if you have a theme in mind, so if you want a mermaid party, I want to be able to make croissants into crabs for you. I want to make little shellfish and into macarons or into biscuits for you. I want to make every single food element suit that event, suit that style. So you're not only just getting the look, but the feel of your party, but every little food item is something pretty. It's like starfish berry bread, or
I love this. Like I can feel the energy, and like I said, not being someone who wants to spend a sink 80 seconds in the kitchen. You are speaking with such passion. It's almost like, oh my goodness, who would want to have a party without you? And tell me about the event space.
So the event space finally is pretty much there. We got plumber connecting my dishwasher last week, and God, it's the best thing ever because I hate washing dishes. So he connected my dishwasher. Amazing. The 2 event spaces. So one is that beautiful, calming coastal suite that's meant to be, it feels like a spa retreat. It's about having a beautiful bridal shower or baby shower or glam party or something that you can just walk into, and a group of girls, and I'm not saying this against the guys, it's for the girls.
There's a lot of good feminine energy in there.
Yeah,
Oh, my
it's
goodness.
for them to get together away from, you have to, if you want a small event, your options are limited. You can't take over one of those big venues because they're not going to allow you, because they can get 300 people. Why would they take 20 of you? You have to go into the back room of a cafe or a pub or something like that. And here you are walking through all these rooms with the pokies going off in the background and dark and dismal areas and kids running around and all of that stuff. This is meant to be that space that eliminates all that crazy chaos, gives you your own personal, like your own entrance into the building. You walking, it's coming. There's no screaming kids. The last thing you want at a bridal shower is screaming kids. You've got it there, and you can talk and you can relax, and you've got your own toilet. You don't have to go through the pokies to get to the toilet, and it's just there for you. And the same with the other space, which is a bit more of a warehouse space. It's meant to be that space for sort of 50 guests to come and enjoy a party, because not everybody has a huge amount of friends. I couldn't fill a 100-person room. I'd be lucky to fill the 50-person room. But you can have your food trucks there. You can have your dance party happening. There's no residents around that will crack it if your music's up too loud. We've had dance parties, mind you, as well. They do a very good job here.
You can park there. That's the beautiful thing too. You don't have to battle city parking or permitted parking. Yeah, it's beautiful.
And again, it's got its own entrance. It's got its own toilet. So if there's two things happening, one in each room, there's no connection that anybody can get through to. It's just the space for everything. And the whole idea of this is to be able to hold that party the one that you want. It's not a DIY venue. It's let us create it for you. My goal from day one is to help those women in business that are local to me, because we all took a big hit during COVID, and we all need that help to lift each other up without me putting in my energy just into them with nothing in return this time. It's about supporting all those suppliers that can that have balloons and backdrops and can come in and do party entertainment and come in and have a food truck or whatever it is, that I hire them. Their business gets a job. I don't have to do it. So I have my venue here, and my venue looks spectacular. And I just get to stand there and go, I get to make the cakes and the pretty stuff and theme the food, and you do everything else. And then we get the cleaners in to clean at the end, because that was my new thing for this year. Get the cleaners.
I love it. I love it. So that's called Events on Citrus. I will put all the links in the show notes. Regnier Cakes is the cake business, and you've just put a thumbs up.
I don't know how I did that, because my hands are here.
Oh, how cool is that? There you go. Technology really cool. So we'll put all the details in the show notes, and I am going, it's coming up again. And I am going
the head.
It must be. Yeah, it must be. Yeah. And I am going to be hosting some of my own events called Courageous Me, off the back of the retreat. In those event spaces, both in the smaller one where you can actually sit at the table, and in the bigger event. So anyone can come in. And I just need to say, you are one phenomenal, courageous woman. Firstly, the fact that you like the kitchen just makes you courageous in itself. But the stories that you're someone who's followed her dreams since you were 5. You've had knockbacks. You've got down, fallen down, stepped back up again. By standing up for yourself and on your own 2 feet, you've made massive changes that have made working in an industry that people want to better for them as well. You constantly support everybody else. So now anyone who can jump back in and return the favor, and you're just going to say thank you.
Thank you.
Melina Regnier is just the most amazing woman, the most amazing chef. She puts so much love and heart into everything she does. Thank you for sharing some of your story with us today.
Thank you.